A scooter engine with over 370,000 kilometers on it. Let's tear it down and take a look. An engine that has run for over 370,000 kilometers. What will it look like inside? Right in front of me is a Changjiang Suzuki UY125. The mileage on this scooter has already reached over 370,000 kilometers. Back then, didn't Changjiang Suzuki host that high mileage endurance challenge? This one right here was in the top 3. This UU with over 370,000 kilometers. The next one under it was a UI with over 360,000 kilometers. Also a UY125. Naturally, the one with the highest mileage is the most interesting to watch. So in this episode, we're going to pull his engine out and tear it down for everyone to see. Before tearing it down, let's first check the current condition of this engine. Let's start it up and listen to how it sounds. There's a bit of timing chain noise. This is well within expectations. Now let's rev it up a bit. For 376,000 kilometers. Sounding like this is actually pretty good. Alright, let's take the engine out. Since the UU uses a mechanical odometer, the gauge you see only shows 70,000 plus. That's because the odometer has already rolled over 3 times. Looking at the engine, it doesn't look like it has ever been opened. Excellent, we can proceed with the teardown. Because for this engine, if it had already been rebuilt during those 370,000 kilometers, then tearing it down would be pointless. Engines with a Kickstarter like this must be pretty rare nowadays, right? Most have phased them out. For its 376,000 kilometers, it has always been serviced at official dealerships, so there are complete records proving it has run over 370,000 kilometers. The dealership even issued a certificate for it. Let's check the transmission case. Inside the cover, it's not very clean. It's full of debris from belt wear. Since the CVT transmission consists of wear items, there's no way it could go 370,000 kilometers without changing parts. Who knows how many times these have been replaced, so we won't pay too much attention to the CVT wear components. The clutch assembly is made by Changjiang. There is a Changjiang logo here. This assembly isn't worth inspecting either, since it's an aftermarket replacement. Let's check the belt. It's using a Gates single-sided cogged belt. Let's look at the roller weights. The wear in this area has no reference value either. Roller weights can't possibly last 300,000 kilometers. But these rollers are already severely worn down. It's time for the owner to replace them again. The owner bought this scooter in 2020. He usually rides it for food delivery and courier services. It's understandable that maintenance gets delayed. Look at this spot too. See how it has been worn down to a sharp edge? And right here, it's completely worn through. So this variator pulley must have racked up quite a lot of mileage itself. Look inside the transmission case. Isn't it filthy? This is all debris from belt wear, mixed with a bit of oil seepage due to the high mileage. The two things mixed together. This actually serves as great supporting evidence for the 370,000 kilometers. Let me scrape some off to show you. Look how thick that layer is. I've never seen a transmission case this dirty. This gunk feels soft to the touch. Let me scrape a bit more for a close-up look. It turns to mush when you crush it, it's soft. Yep, that's definitely belt wear residue. Over 370,000 kilometers. Who knows how many belts he has gone through. The crankshaft oil seal is seeping a bit of oil. But at 370,000 kilometers, that's completely forgivable. This belt dust isn't just here. It has slung all over the inside of the transmission case. It wouldn't look like this without such extreme mileage. Let's remove the starter motor. Let's see if the starter can also back up the 370,000 kilometer claim. Let's inspect the starter gear teeth. You can pause the video to take a look. The wear on these teeth is quite substantial. Honestly, for food delivery and courier work, the starter motor isn't used excessively. but purely due to the accumulated mileage. Over time, the wear on these gear teeth serves as solid proof. After all, it spends less time starting and more time running. Everyone, grab a pen and do the math. A 6-year-old scooter doing 376,000 kilometers. How many kilometers does a delivery rider have to cover a day? I asked the delivery guys who buy engine oil from me. If you want to make good money, riding 200 to 300 kilometers a day is just a regular routine. Looking at this chain tensioner, it's seeping oil but has never been removed. If it had been removed, there would be tool marks, and right beneath the intake manifold. This is likely a failed seal, which caused a slight fuel weep. Let's remove the cylinder head to see if the engine is clean inside. Judging by the look of these bolts, though, it's probably full of sludge inside. As expected, no surprises upon opening the cover. You can see engine sludge inside the valve cover. It's not extremely thick, but there's quite a bit of it. Look at this, 370,000 kilometers, and the valves have never been adjusted. The factory paint marks are still there. They're just a little dirty. The adjustment screws show no signs of tool marks either. Let's check the exhaust valve side, it's equally pristine. Looking closely, the amount of sludge is quite significant. This also confirms the timing chain has never been replaced. It's completely stretched out, though it's hard to tell from this angle. I'll show you once I take it off. In other words, this engine has done over 370,000 kilometers. And except for the CVT transmission, no other part has ever been touched. There is another way to verify if the valve cover has ever been removed. And that is by checking this valve cover gasket. If it has been removed once, it becomes very easy to pull off later. If it has never been removed from the factory, then the semicircular molded sections will be stuck solid, right here. I'm sure my fellow mechanics know exactly what I mean. If it has never been touched, it's a pain to remove, probably because it has degraded over time. I gave it a casual tug and almost tore it right here. With such high mileage, degradation is completely normal. It won't budge at all. Let's force it out with pliers. That's the only option. Oh right, the UY125 engine is identical to the UY125 engine. Many viewers requested this before, so tearing this one down should be even more interesting. Look, the gasket on the tensioner is still the original one. If it had been removed or replaced, it wouldn't look like this. Next, let's remove the cylinder head. Oh, by the way, let's check the valve clearance first. Testing it by hand, the valve clearance feels a bit too tight already. With such high mileage comes valve wear, so the exhaust valve clearance will definitely shrink. The intake side feels alright. The timing chain guide also shows obvious wear. Perfectly consistent with high mileage characteristics. The cylinder head was manufactured by Changjiang. You can't tell much about the valves just by looking, but you can tell this engine has started burning a bit of oil. Let's get a feeler gauge to measure its valve clearance. Let's try a 0.05 mm feeler gauge on the exhaust valve. It binds up slightly. Look, the feeler gauge is bending. So the exhaust valve clearance is pretty much right at 0.05 mm. A 0.07 mm gauge won't fit at all. Now for the intake valve side. A 0.07 mm feeler gauge feels just right. According to the service manual, the intake valve clearance spec is 0.04 to 0.08 mm. The intake clearance is correct. The exhaust valve spec is 0.12 to 0.16 mm. The exhaust valve clearance. Let's pull out the rocker shaft. You don't even need to measure this, it's visible to the naked eye. There is definitely some wear on it. Now let's take the rocker arm off. Let's look at the surface of the rocker roller. The surface looks unworn, but checking the play in the roller bearing is the most important part. It actually feels decent. This rocker arm can definitely keep on going. Roller rocker arms are just highly wear resistant. The slight play here is well within normal limits. Now let's look at the camshaft. The camshaft surprisingly shows no wear. There's only a slight color difference. The path where the roller travels just looks a bit shinier. Impressive. Let's check the camshaft bearings. It uses CNU bearings. Turns out CNU makes good bearings after all. These have already run for over 370,000 kilometers. The bearings have no axial or radial play. And they aren't noisy at all. Looks like they are ready for another round. The timing chain guide on this side has been bent out of shape by the tensioner. This is primarily caused by a stretched chain. Let's remove the valves and inspect them. Let's take out the valve spring first. The free length of the valve spring is 32.67 millimeters. The standard spec is 36.99 millimeters. It has sagged a bit. Valve stem seals? Let's test the valve fitment, though I probably don't even need to. They are clearly worn out and completely aged. There's absolutely no elasticity left. Let's pull both valves out. Let's check the contact surface between the valves and valve seats. First, looking at this area. Visually, the intake valve seat looks fine. But the exhaust valve seat has severe pitting. As for the valves themselves, the sealing face of the intake valve looks acceptable. But the exhaust valve shows very obvious wear. And the contact surface is still a bit rough. Let's take a macro shot of the exhaust valve. The wear and tear is very obvious. But for 76,000 kilometers, this is completely acceptable. Earlier, I was in a hurry and wanted to use a micrometer to measure it, but looking at it like this, there's no need to measure anymore. You can all see for yourselves that there's no wear. It's quite bright and shiny. If we want to fix this cylinder, we'll need to do a valve job. And then replace it with new valves and lap them. Let's take a look at how the cylinder block is doing. First, let's check the exhaust side of the cylinder. This side can only be considered as having normal signs of use. These vertical lines don't count as scoring. Because if you look at these honing marks, they are still clearly visible. Where the vertical lines are, the honing marks aren't broken. So this can only be considered normal wear from use. Now let me show you from a second angle. These honing marks, see how they're continuous? This is actually really good. Let's check the intake side. The intake side actually has two scoring marks. They're quite wide, too. But you heard its engine sound just now, it was normal. Right? Do you know why? Scoring marks like these, located on both sides of the piston pin, are all caused by high temperatures inside the cylinder. It has nothing to do with the 370,000 plus kilometers or the engine oil. Here, we need to talk about the piston structure. The piston has a barrel-shaped oval structure. Right in the middle of the piston skirt. About 1 centimeter up from the bottom. This area is where the piston diameter is at its largest. Now you can see the anomaly, right? The area with the largest diameter has no scoring marks. Instead, the scoring is on both sides where the diameter is smaller. Plus, there's no scoring on the exhaust side, only on the intake side. This can be completely diagnosed as being caused by high temperatures inside the cylinder. What causes high cylinder temperatures? First, poor spark plug ignition. Second, poor fuel quality. Third, a fuel mixture that is too lean. All of these can lead to this phenomenon. If the scoring was caused by high mileage or oil issues, both the intake and exhaust sides would be scored simultaneously. Now you understand, right? When we talk about the piston in a moment, I'll explain further why the scoring happened in these two specific spots. You'll understand as soon as you see it. Alright, let's take out the piston and check its wear condition. You see the intake side of the piston, right? Correspondingly, we found two scoring marks. But in the middle, which is this position, the diameter is at its largest. From this point downward, the diameter gets smaller. Going upward, the diameter also gets smaller. And moving towards both sides, the diameter gets smaller here. And it gets smaller over here too. So, this is its barrel-shaped oval structure. All pistons are like this. Just think about what the shape of an egg looks like. Let's look at the exhaust side. There's only a bit of wear from motion. The original machining marks on the piston are still there, which means this side of the piston has basically no wear. So why did these scoring marks appear on both sides? You can tell just by looking at the structure of the piston. Look at this area right here. Running through both sides of the piston. When exposed to abnormally high temperatures, this part will expand faster than the middle. Because the middle section of the piston is hollow with nothing there. So these two sides, which have more metal mass, Once they hit an abnormally high temperature, their expansion rate increases drastically, which leads to this scoring phenomenon. Alright, now you understand, right? So normally, you must pay attention to maintenance. Spark plugs should be replaced when they reach the required mileage, and fuel injectors should be cleaned at certain mileage intervals. As long as the intake side is scored, but the exhaust side is not, it can be diagnosed as high cylinder temperatures, caused by these very factors. Let's look at this Magneto stator. It's covered in rust. This thing is in direct contact with the air, so it's completely normal. Luckily, it isn't rusted solid. We can pull it out. Let's look at the inside. Oh my god, inside here. You can't even see what the inside of the Magneto looks like. It's completely caked in this layer of sludge. I feel like the owner of this bike honestly needs to bow down and thank this UY125. 370,000 kilometers of food delivery and courier work. Think about how much value that brought in. Of course, he also needs to thank himself for his own hard work. The value of this vehicle is no longer just the monetary cost of a scooter. This is a legitimate, pure tool of productivity. I don't know if Changjiang Suzuki gave him any sort of reward when they bought this bike back from him, because hitting such a high mileage is an incredible advertisement for Changjiang Suzuki's UY125. It provided a great boost for their marketing. Here's another piece of evidence proving this engine has never been disassembled before. Look at this gasket. The color inside here has already blended completely with the engine case. When you tear it open, its actual color looks like this. And over here, this is also the best proof that it's never been opened. If this wind deflector gasket had been taken apart even once, it definitely wouldn't look like this. Let's remove the idler gear. The idler gear is also covered in sludge, since it's an electric starter motor setup. This component right here is the Sprag clutch. Yeah, the Sprag clutch isn't too clean either. It's completely covered in sludge. Let's check the wear condition on this Sprag clutch. Mainly look at the inside of this large gear. Looking at where it makes contact with the starter rollers, no wear has been produced. So, this matches his usage habits for food delivery and courier work, meaning the bike runs constantly. But the starter motor operates less frequently, though relative to 376,000 kilometers. You can see the wear on the starter motor gear teeth as well. Since you've watched this far, please give us a like. Next, let's look at the oil pump drive gear and the oil pump gear itself. What is this oil pump gear made of? It's nylon. People used to worry about nylon not lasting, but look at it after 370,000 kilometers. You can definitely tell that there is some wear. As you can see, the teeth are frayed on both sides, and they are even slightly deformed. Now let's look over at the drive gear. The one that drives that nylon gear. Do you see that? The middle section of these gear teeth is also worn down. You can clearly see that the middle of the tooth tips has become thinner. And look at these tooth tips right here. They've clearly been worn away. So, there is absolutely no need to worry about oil pump gears being nylon. The material itself has a self-lubricating effect. When I disassembled engines from other brands that used nylon oil pump gears in the past, some people complained about it. After seeing this, you can rest easy, right? Let's check the crankcase over here. There are no burrs. Pretty good. There isn't much else to look at on this side. Inside here, it's just a crankshaft and two bearings. I can't see this bearing very clearly, let me clean it up a bit. Let's take a look at the brand of this bearing. It's from CNU, Bahan. CNU did a pretty solid job this time. It still spins very smoothly. Let's film and check the condition of the connecting rod big end. Listen closely, everyone. This method is very useful for checking single-cylinder engine crankshafts. You should be able to hear a slight clicking sound from the play. Right now, there is engine oil inside. Let's wash out the engine oil from inside through this oil passage hole. Then I'll record it again for you to hear. This way, the oil inside should be mostly cleaned out. Let's record it again so you can listen. Now, based on this sound, there is likely some wear. However, it hasn't worn down to its limit yet. As you heard just now, the engine sound was normal. A condition like this will at most cause the engine to vibrate a bit more. It won't affect the actual acoustic sound. If it got any worse, it would start making abnormal noises. In this state, the oil film from the engine oil is still protecting it. Alright, let's turn it over again. You can hear a slight gritty, rustling sound. But it's completely forgivable. This entire crankshaft has been used for 376,000 kilometers. Performance like this is already considered excellent. Let's scrape it a bit to see the brand of the left side crankshaft bearing. Look, it's also from CNU. Now, only the gearbox is left to disassemble. This Suzuki Super Core engine utilizes an offset cylinder and low friction technology, along with a long stroke design and a lightweight piston. The long stroke gives it quick acceleration, while the lightweight piston keeps vibrations low, so the engine feels great to ride. It looks like the owner must have changed the engine oil very frequently. And he definitely changed the gear oil frequently too. What kind of gear oil is this green stuff? These gears look like they have zero wear. Gear components generally have a very long lifespan. Alright, let's look at the bearings inside. One is a Changjiang bearing, and the other is a CNU bearing. Looking further, the one on the outside is a Changjiang bearing. And on the other side, there are two CNU bearings. Then this one with the shaft is a Changjiang brand component. And the tip has undergone a special heat treatment. Let's measure the piston ring end gap. First, let's measure the top compression ring. The actual measurement comes out to about 0.3. Take a look at this thickness. This has already exceeded the original factory specification of 0.2. Next, let's look at the end gap of the second compression ring. It has already reached 0.45. The 0.5 feeler gauge blade can't fit in. This has already exceeded the factory maximum limit of 0.3. Then for the oil control ring, the measured end gap is 0.38 millimeters. This one is definitely over the limit as well. Alright, at this point, this 376,000 kilometer Suzuki UY125 engine disassembly is complete. Now, this doesn't mean it's completely junked at 376,000 kilometers. It can still keep riding. I recorded the audio at the beginning for you to listen to. This mileage is genuinely impressive. In the end, the gearbox was the cleanest part inside the engine. The oil sludge buildup is a bit heavy elsewhere. If you guys are worried about oil sludge, using Shell Advanced Motor Oil, with its strong cleaning capabilities, will prevent such a heavy accumulation of sludge. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching.